What's up, everybody? It's your boy, Happy Alien number one. This is the ninth episode of the Happy Alien podcast, and we are a bit late, but that is due to the world of the interwebs and stuff happens. But we got a great show for you guys today. But before we introduce our guest, let's do a little housekeeping. This is a no judgment free podcast. There are internet issues at many times due to otherworldly, strange activities. So stick with us. Hopefully, we'll figure it out and it'll be A-OK. And quick reminder, please hit that thumbs up, that like, that subscribe button. Consider becoming a member of this channel for future episodes like today. Now, we have to sell stuff online, and let's show the commercial to sell some stuff. All right, everybody, we got a merchandise store down below with a lot of my career merchandise, autograph headshots. We got some special t-shirts for sale. You can also donate. We got that goes out. Everybody loves DonkeyLips. Everybody loves autograph photos. So we got cameos as well. If you'd like to pick up a shout out, a cameo, a video, all right, let's just get the dang videos off screen. My computer and internet doesn't want to work correctly when they're on screen. But check out the merchandise links down below. If you feel like supporting, donating to the show, I appreciate you. I love you. You are what make the Happy Alien podcast possible, since every episode seems to get flagged for some dang reason. It's because we're aliens. We got a very special guest. He is a writer, a producer, a director, a jack of all trades in the entertainment industry. He's going to give us a lot of career knowledge. He's made some amazing horror movies. I call them B movies. And, you know, the weird science fiction movies. I mean, he's got a movie called Mega Shark versus Mecha Shark. We're going to have ourselves a good time. His name is Jose Prendes. I met him with the Wet Movie One man himself, and I had a coffee, and we were friends for life. Let's get him on screen. Everybody, welcome Jose Prendes.
Mike, thanks for having me on. It's an honor and a pleasure. I mean, obviously, when we connected, it was almost like kismet. Like, I think we were meant to be pals. So I'm glad we kept in touch. And again, like I said, I'm honored to be hanging out with you tonight.
Yeah, well, quickly, everybody, he's got a YouTube channel as well. It's called Master Chaos. The link is in the description. Check him out. Subscribe to him. He's reviewing movies. He's doing a bunch of stuff that I've never seen before. I don't know how to explain, but he is doing it for all of you crazies out there in the cinemaphile world. Please let everybody know how you started your career.
Man, since I was a kid, I've been into movies. I was an only child, so for me, I can't think of a time when movies weren't a giant part of my adolescence, of my growing up. They were my brothers and sisters. You know, television as well. You know, the Nickelodeon days. So I'm very familiar with your work before we got to meet. So for me, my heart told me it's movies, and I've never wavered from that. And I just, you know, find my circuitous way to cinema. Everybody has a different sort of journey to movies, to being creative, and that's for me, it started off very, very early.
So let's see if I can hopefully not mess up the internet. Get some of your IMDb projects so people could see it on screen, because you got a bigger list than me as an actor for probably a shorter career. And this is pretty fantastic. So
Nice.
let me see if I can get a better screen than that. So your most recent one is Monster Mash, which I watched the other day, and we're going to talk about that in just a second. But some of the other ones now, I need to go out and watch them because I'm a fan of yours. We got The Exorcist, Headless Horseman, The Legend of Llorona. I saw that everywhere in Target when I was walking around one time.
Yep.
Unspeakable Horrors. I can't read the rest of the name. But Blood Brothers,
It's
Hansel and
yeah.
Gretel, and there's the one I'm interested in: Mecha Shark versus. What the heck is that one about?
Well, that was from the studio that brought you the Sharknado movies, and it was I want to say maybe the third Mega Shark movie, maybe the fourth, and they wanted to have a giant megalodon versus a giant mecha shark, and so I said, all right, I'll write that. Luckily, I didn't have to direct it because I think that would have been a headache, but writing it was fun as hell.
Yeah, good point. This is the writing credits. I could look at the director credits in a second, but so you're a writer and a producer, and you kind of
Mhm.
do it all. Like, so let's quickly talk about the writing aspect since you brought that up. How did you literally become a writer? And then you've written books and other things as well. Just talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I love writing. Just like movies, I discovered a real passion for creative writing, and in school, I was lucky enough to discover that passion early. We had to do a lot of creative writing assignments and things like that, and whenever I would read mine aloud, the class would always react and have a good time with it. I'm like, oh, that's great. I love being able to give people that sort of reaction and entertain people on that level, and I decided, okay, I'm gonna write books, and to this day, I'm a very voracious reader, and I try to keep busy with all that. Sometimes there's not enough time. I mean, there's never enough time, just like the Twilight Zone episode, to read everything. Uh, but writing, it just feels comfortable. And I found out my parents passed away when I was very young, but I found out my father was a writer. So for me, that's a little piece of him that he left me, and I try to continue that tradition. And when I hit about eighth grade, I decided to teach myself how to write scripts. So I picked up a book at the library, and that's how I taught myself how to write a screenplay. I was writing screenplays before I went to film school, and I suggest that to anybody who's thinking of becoming a writer. Read, that's number one. And if you want to be screenwriting, then read scripts, and because that's important, because a lot of people don't read scripts, and you have to read because you get a flow. You get a flow. You got to make sure that your script is a good read too. It's not a boring, this person walks in, says this. You got to make sure there's a little poetry to it. That's part of the fun of it. But you can pick up a book and teach yourself. You don't necessarily have to go to film school, although I did end up going just to appease my step parent, my foster parents. But writing has always been something that I've loved, and I've developed a passion for. And I'm sure you have moments like this as well when you feel something. It's almost like the universe is talking to you, and you kind of channel things. The best stories for me come when they just pop out of nowhere, and you're like, whoa, what's that? Okay, that sounds cool. What is that? Like this thing I'm working on now, which to me just came out of nowhere, and I wrote this script in 4 days, and I'm now in the process of hopefully getting it made this year. So writing, not every filmmaker has to be a writer, but I do
Yeah,
suggest that
so let's talk.
everybody has to at least have a focus on it, understand that process.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit about that for the writers out there, because it's not as easy as just going to school, learning how to write and index. I mean, I used to download illegal copies of Final Draft to try to pretend I was a writer. I used to do that. But how does one go about writing a script? Did you get an agency and then they would tell you a movie idea and then give you a budget and then you would write the script? Or do you write the script and then try to sell it to a studio? How is that process?
I've never had an agent. I had a manager for a bit, but that didn't really go anywhere. A couple meetings here and there, but usually you write what's called a spec script or a speculation script, and that's basically an idea you have that you want to put on paper. Is that, like the thing I just wrote, which we could talk about later. Here's an idea. I think this is great. I've never seen anything like this. I'm gonna write it and I'm gonna try and get it made, and then you would try to send it to an agency. Hey, would you be interested in reading this? Or, if you're lucky enough to know somebody in development at, say, Blumhouse, which luckily I do, but it hasn't really led to anything yet, but I like that they still read my stuff. You could send it to them and then they'll read it and say, hey, it's great or whatever. It's not exactly right for us. That's usually what happens. The bad news is you could spend 4 days writing something. You could spend 4 years writing something. You're probably still going to get it's not right for us. What else do you have? Which is the heartbreaking part of making a movie. But usually if you're a writer, you're unless you're hired, like the Asylum would come to me for my last few things and say, hey, we want, Mega Shark. We want Headless Horseman movie. Then you have a job and you have a direction, then you can kind of write to that. But usually a writer writes for himself and then hopes to make money off of it.
Yeah, what an awesome story. And the truth is, just keep writing, and then you're going to amass a bunch of movies or screenplays or ideas or treatments. And then maybe if you get a meeting one day, even with a big studio like Blumhouse, you have like 50 things at your repertoire that you could pick from and send to them. I mean, it's kind of like, in a bigger fashion, the Judd Apatow effect, where like Judd Apatow just kept writing. Then, he sold his movies, and then his movies got so big that they're like, do you got more? Do you have more? And then every script he wrote 5 years earlier or whatever, he's selling to every studio. Now he's directing. He's bringing in his good buddies that he had coffee with, which you're going to do in one of your movies very, very soon. You're going to bring me into one of them. And it's a really interesting thing how that comes about. But so you're kind of showing that you don't need an agent or a manager to actually make it into the industry. Whether you're a superstar at the moment or not, you have made it into the industry and you've done some amazing projects. And like I said, we're just looking at your writing credits right now. You got Hansel and Gretel, like some amazing like B movies or horror movies, and The Haunting of Whaley House. I remember this one from back in the days. I don't remember watching it because I kind of don't get into horror, but like, you have things that I remember seeing in video stores on the shelves. And it is such a beautiful moment, when you look back at your career and you see stuff like that. What was your first memory of DVD media or Blu-ray, or how did you feel? Did you take pictures? Did you take a video? Did you bring your family? And like, that's my movie.
Oh, that's a good question. Well, thank you for saying amazing. They are what they are. I know I can always say I tried my best, no matter what the circumstances were. But yeah, the first time I got anything released, it was actually my first movie. I was able to get pretty much everything in physical up until the new stuff, but the new stuff is hard to get on physical anymore. The market has changed. But it was amazing. It was just a wonderful thing. I got to see that at Blockbuster when Blockbuster was a thing. So to me, that was mind-altering and inspiring. And I knew, hey, I could, if I did this, let's see what else I could do. And so a lot of that, is the highs of this kind of career. There's a lot of lows. And the lows are the stuff that they don't prepare you for in film school. But being able to see a movie in physical media, being able to buy it in a store, it's it's unimaginable, honestly, because it's all this frustration. It started out with me sitting in a dark room writing by myself, and now it's out for the world to see, for better or worse. It's amazing. It's amazing.
Yeah, so everybody asking questions, we will definitely try to get. Sorry, we will try to get to your questions toward the end of the period of the show, because right now we're dealing with his career and beginnings. But please keep those questions coming. Super chats will get priority. But wait for that segment towards the end of the show. But thank you guys for chiming in. I truly appreciate it. So let's quickly look at your director credits. And how does one become a director? And are all of these projects written by you, or is it vice versa?
I only direct stuff I write. Just a personal preference. Also, I've never really been offered anything to direct that I didn't write, but I just I since I started as a writer, I feel like I desire to be connected to the material. I want to make sure that the characters, I know them inside and out, so that it's easier to put them on camera. So if an actor has a question, I'm not like, well, I guess, yeah, let's try that. I'm like, well, let's not do that because this doesn't fit into what happens here. And I think a director should know that. So I always prefer to write my own stuff just because I want to be 100% as much in control as I can. Despite the fact that making a movie is the hardest thing in the world, and you can't really, I mean, not the hardest thing, but it's hard enough to control the universe to try to make a movie. So as much as I can be in control of what goes behind of and in front of the camera, I'd like to be, because it helps.
That's amazing. So yeah, we could go over each and every one of your movies and have stories from each and every one during the podcast, but we are on a limited time, and let's just talk about quickly. I'll ask, what was your favorite experience, whether it be, I'm going to say directing, and what was your favorite experience directing of any of the movies that you've had or that you made?
You never forget your first. So it goes back to the Monster Man, which was my first movie right out of film school, shot on DV with my friends. It's actually getting a Blu-ray release now, which is nice. That was a golden experience for me. Nothing went wrong on that one, and that's something you can't ever say about a production. There's always stuff that goes caca on you. But that one, to me, that was my most perfect filmmaking experience. It has not changed to this day.
I got to check it out. You got too much stuff, man, and I don't typically like horror movies if most of your stuff is horror movies. But you know what? Because you're a good friend, I'm going to critique it. Why? Because I watched Monster Mash. I actually, finally got around to watching Monster Mash, your recent, call it a smash hit, your recent smash hit, because it had Michael Madsen. And I remember watching your tweets and your Instagrams, sharing your experiences of making it. So I kind of felt like I was along for the ride with this movie. So that's why when I finally watched it, I was like, is it going to be bad? I don't really like horror movies. I'm not really into classic monsters. But I had a fantastic time, very
Great.
prideful, knowing that I know you. Then I started critiquing it. I started critiquing the script, and I'm like, you know what? It's actually pretty good. The concept of finding body parts to build this ultimate creature, I'm just like, that's a pretty good concept. And then the classic monsters really reminded me of the universal creatures. And then the acting, I mean, there was a lot of talking and bar scenes and stuff like that. But I was like, he's really going for it here, really making a movie and not really cheesy, really trying to bring out the performances and everything. And then I started looking at the shots, the lighting, the angles, and then I was like, man, this looks like a 1940s or 50s horror movie from possibly Universal. And I was like, dude, he's doing a fantastic job. Can you speak about, how some of your techniques that you put into that movie? How was it to work with some of the actors? And then you kind of mentioned a little bit of a scary story about your health and stuff like that went along with this. But yeah, let the people know about Monster Mash.
Well, thank you. I'm glad you enjoyed it. This movie broke me mentally. It was the hardest movie I've ever made. I grew up with the Universal monsters. I love them to death. To this day, yearly rewatches. I love them to pieces. And when this project came to me from Asylum, I was like, absolutely, I'm the right fucking guy. This is the movie I've been dying to make. I love Monster Squad, so the idea of doing a reverse Monster Squad where the monsters were the good guys was, I mean, it's a no-brainer. Of course I'm going to try to do it. But then they say, well, you got to do it in 6 days. It's 12 hours hard out. You can't go overtime. You have less than $100,000, and it's just obstacle on top of obstacle on top of obstacle, and it just beats you down. And then 2 days into production, our Dracula gets COVID, and so he's our lead. He's in almost every scene. So now I have to rejigger it a little bit so we shoot around this guy. It was very difficult. It was very, very stressful. Our only day outside was a torrential downpour. One of my makeup people, slipped and cracked his head open. It
Let
was, yeah,
let me cut
it was
let me
horrible.
cut you off for a split. Let me cut you off for a split second, because right when you were talking about how long you had to film and the actual budget, the internet just completely went black for like a minute. Can you restate how long you
Oh,
had to film the movie and the budget again, and then tell us the Dracula story about COVID?
oh, no worries. Yeah, we had 6 days to make the film. They said it's got to be 6 days, 12 hours hard out. You can't go over. And Dracula, our lead actor, gets COVID on the beginning of day 3. So he only shot 2 days with us. So we had to shoot around him. We had the only exterior stuff we had. It was not raining any other day, but the day we're outside, torrential downpour. It was almost like the universe was against us, which is not only physically exhausting but mentally exhausting, because you want to, I wrote it, so like the writer, you see this movie and you're given these elements. You're like, God, it's just, we're not getting it right. We're not nailing all the little bits and pieces. Um, uh, so it was morally, not morally, I guess, demoralizing and mentally very taxing, because your baby is not coming out the way you wanted it to. And that happens to every movie. But on a level like this, where there's no reshoots, there's no going back, this is all the money you have. It's even more stressful, because like, look, we shoot what we shoot, and this is it. So me and my team, I had an amazing team, incredible DP, and early on we're like, we're gonna go. Oh my god, I'm blanking on the goddamn name. The Kubrick movie, Barry Lyndon. We're gonna go Barry Lyndon with it. Let's light only with candles. Let's make sure we go very much Hammer horror with it. Let's keep everything low light. Let's lean into the Universal aesthetic. Let's lean into the RKO Poverty Row situation, where they didn't have a lot of money and they shot in little small sets. Let's really give people a gothic looking movie. And my cast was excellent, and they were game to play and have fun with it. And that really turned things around and made it more interesting. But it was the hardest movie I'd ever had to make, but we pushed ourselves to make it look as authentic as possible. And I'm hearing that's what a lot of the monster fans are responding to, the fact that we went as authentic as we could.
Yeah, again, I'm not a big B movie, horror movie, whatever concept you want to put toward it fan. And I consider myself a film critic at a medium level, but like I said, I was very pleasantly surprised. Like in my mind, you were really going for it as a director. And I knew it had a very small budget. I knew you were probably pushing 8 or 9 days to film it. Like I had that thought in my head while I was watching it. And I'm like, man, he's doing a pretty damn good job given all these constraints. And I'm like, yeah, I want to work with this guy. Like, so I started thinking of scripts that we could write, like a romantic comedy, and maybe we can get like a $30,000 budget somehow, and I can star in like a romantic comedy or something like that. Because I think you could do it all. And would you ever see yourself directing like a comedy or writing a comedy or anything that's a little bit different than the genre you've been entrenched in for many years?
Actually, yeah, my first movie, The Monster Man, is a comedy. It's a Naked Gun-esque, scary movie take on end of the world movies, kind of like lampooning stuff like Omega Man and End of Days, that kind of stuff. So yeah, I started out making a comedy, and I'm a big fan of humor. And everything I write has humor in it. Because I feel that counterpoint is so important. And I mean, I think when you go back to any movie you like, people usually remember the humorous moments, or the shocking moments. But I think that's sort of what it, allows an audience to attach to a character if they make them laugh or they give them something like a performance. Wow, I've never seen anybody say a line like that. That's interesting. Like, oh man, I love this guy. He cracks me up. So you have to balance the humor, within the horror movie. And for me, I don't know that I've ever made a true scary movie, because to me I'm always kind of in that 80s mindset where I grew up. So I'm always trying to make a carnival haunted house movie, where in terms of, oh, hey, there's a little fun thing here, little fun thing here. But it's never, I'm not the kind of guy who will go out and make like torture porn or anything like that. Something really depressing. I want to make
you have to
sure
say
people have
corn
fun.
on YouTube. You have to say corn
Oh, yeah.
nowadays on YouTube.
Yeah. Torture corn.
Yeah. I don't know if you know this story, and then we're going to get to some of the questions because I'm seeing some really good questions. And normally I wanted to wait till the end, but we'll get some questions at the end of this segment in a couple of minutes, because there's some good ones that I want to ask you about before we forget. But I don't know if you know my story. I don't really like horror films. I mean, I love the retro horror, the Freddy Kruegers, the Jasons. I grew up on stuff like that, like Faces of Death. But then horror became like torture horror or gore with all the blood, and like movies like, I don't know the names of the movies, but I just started to hate it. Then Saw came out, and I like that because my brain likes puzzles. But then they added, the gore, but they added a puzzle to it, and so I kind of enjoyed that. I loved Scream. That opened up a new world of horror for me, like in the vein of classic horror movies. And it was a new character, and it was like a mystery. So it was like Scooby Doo to me, but of horror. Yeah. So I loved that. And then what was the movies that came out after that? Around Saw, I enjoyed, but I didn't watch all of them. There's too many. And then the one that I really enjoyed recently was The Purge. I loved the concept of the first Purge movie, but I hated the movie. I mean, how are you going to come up with a concept where you can, kill anybody for 3 or 4 or 6 or 7 hours in the middle of the night and then leave everybody in a house? I want it. If there's so much chaos that could be happening in the world, but the first movie, it was the chaos coming to the house. So it made it like one of those house movies where they stay in the house, and it annoyed me. But budgetarily, as not a filmmaker, but as an actor that knows filmmaking, that was their budget. They had to make it in a house, one location, to make that movie. But the concept of that movie is fantastic, and I loved it. So I loved when part 2, they took it out into the streets. Then they went after the politicians, and then now they did it kind of like an Old West story. And it's
Yeah.
okay. Now I'm getting annoyed, but I love the idea of the purge.
Same. Yeah,
So
I love them.
that's my horror stories that I enjoy.
Yeah, and Scream is a good example. I love that movie. I've seen it over 100 times, and the reason it works is there's humor and there's characters we love. Billy and Stu are idiots. I mean, I think Stu in particular is so hilarious, and we love him as a character because of his humor, not because he's a killer. Spoilers, but because he's such a likable character. And I think if humor's missing from anything, you instantly pick up on it. And I think audiences nowadays just need fun movies. Nowadays, everything is so dour and dark and slow and depressing, and that's fine, but I don't want everything to be like that. I remember when stuff like The Goonies is not really a horror movie, but the children are in peril. There's real danger, but it's such a fun movie that even when they're in danger, it's still exciting. Like, oh, I hope they're okay. Like, oh man, they're gonna slip. That I think that's missing from movies nowadays because stuff is so digital and fake and dour that I kind of feel bad that all the movies that children are getting nowadays is animated stuff because it just feels disposable now.
Yeah, those classic adventures, like how you talked about Monster Squad, The Goonies, like those classic adventures that we get to watch in our teenage or younger years, just play a role in who you became as a director, a writer, a producer. Quick question from Brent Mania, who I really love and respect. He said, "Any big studios ever interested in anything about you? You talked about Blumhouse, and you talked
Yeah.
about Asylum. Let us know any bigger studios, but let us know about those two studios because those are big in my opinion, Blumhouse and
Uh,
Asylum."
well, Asylum distributed my second movie, so that's how I met them. And then when I moved to LA, they were nice enough to keep hiring me for stuff. So they've kept me employed. Blumhouse, I know Ryan Turek, the guy who's like the head of development over there. I wrote for Shock Till You Drop, which was an online horror magazine website kind of thing for a while, and so that was run by him. So we've stayed in touch, and he pretty much reads anything I write. If I send him an email, he'll be like, "Yeah, send it over," and he'll give me his honest thoughts. So it's nice that I have that outlet. I was close to selling a sci-fi project to MGM, but again, here's the thing about the industry: you could write something that one person loves, then they have to give it to, but they're not the boss, So okay, we love it, we're gonna pass it on to the boss. They pass it on to the boss. The boss, yeah, I like it. Maybe ask for some rewrites. Okay, you do the rewrites for free, by the way, especially if you're not in the union. And you do the rewrites. The boss goes, okay, I'm going to move it on to the next person. The next person says, oh, we're not doing science fiction, and it's dead. That's basically what happened. I once sold a Goonies style movie to Sony. Actually, the producers of the Amazing Spider-Man movies, the Andrew Garfield ones, and then all of a sudden, it was the same situation. Everybody at the office loved it. I would get calls from like, oh man, the interns, have all read it. The guy who brings our coffee read it. Everyone loves it. We're gonna show it to the boss, and then the boss comes in and says, nah, and then it's dead. So it's so frustrating to the point that I've left the industry many times and just gonna come back because I love this shit too much. I can't give up on it.
I'm telling you, dude, it's in your heart. Same thing for me as an actor. Like I've been shit on. I've lost so many parts. I was just speaking the other day about a humiliation ritual that an entire crew of a certain movie put me through. And I just realized I was put through a humiliation ritual on a couple of occasions. But we could talk about that in the conspiracy segment. But like, you love the industry, you just can't quit. It's like, I don't care if I make YouTube videos or YouTube movies or whatever. I'm just gonna stay here talking about movies and film, and I'm gonna be broke as hell. But yeah, I love it. This is our life. So another good question written: are you as OCD about camera lenses as I would be? That's a director thought.
I'm not very technical. Be the first one to admit that. I leave a lot of the technical stuff to my DP. Usually,
Yeah,
the DP I bring in, I want to trust the guy because look, I'll show you pictures. Here's what I want the movie to look like. Get me this, But in terms of sizes, it's something that I think I have dyslexia with numbers. So I'm like, wait, the 100 is the long lens, right? Okay. So, and then the 50 is like the medium, right? So I have to kind of keep reminding myself all that stuff. But no, I think I'm more, honestly, my favorite time is shooting, and my favorite thing is working with the actors. I love to work with the actors. I love to just, sit down and not so much let's rehearse the scene, but let's talk about what's happening. Let's talk about, let's talk about trying something different. If we have time to improv, we'll improv. Hey, when he's saying this, why don't you give him a look like, oh, you've heard the story 1,000 times. I love layering in little things that if an audience watches it a second time, like, oh, I never noticed that he does that. Oh, I never noticed that was kind of a tell that kind of, hinted at this or that. I love those moments because it goes beyond the page, and it's like me winking at the audience, like, hey, try this. If you watched it a second time, you'll notice an extra added little bonus that
there we go.
wasn't there.
Yeah, let me cut you off because that's a fantastic subject. Any Easter eggs in Monster Mash, or any favorite Easter eggs from any of your projects as a director?
Uh, eh, there's always a phrase I always use, and it's nothing worth doing is easy. That's kind of my motto, and so that pretty much appears in almost all of my movies. That's sort of a running thing for me. So it'll pop up. Someone will say it in a line of dialogue. That's the only one that I think is sort of the recurring thing where it's a continuing sort of motif for me. But then I reference move like in Monster Mash. There's a scene when we see Dracula sitting at the bar, the pub for the first time. He's got the lighting like Bela Lugosi's Dracula. So I always try to like hint at references. So the astute cinema goer will be like, oh yeah, that's cool. That's what Todd Browning would do. That kind of stuff. I like to have fun with that.
Do you ever put yourself in the movies or reference your other movies?
Gosh, I sometimes I'll cameo if there's time, and there's a part. I think the last cameo I did was in Headless Horseman a couple years ago. But I don't usually like to reference other movies unless it's like like for a joke, like somebody's watching it on TV or something like that. But no, usually not.
All right. Brent Mania with a $5 donation. Thank you, Brent. Appreciate it so much. Have you ever been interested to write movies with multiple sequels?
In terms of as in writing a sequel, absolutely. I mean, Mecha Shark was a sequel, and I wrote a sequel to Hansel and Gretel for the Asylum. So I've written sequels before. I wouldn't have any problem doing something like that, like a Scream 7 or 8. I mean, at this point, I'd love to do that. A Chucky movie, I'd love to do that. Absolutely. I think that's not something I would turn down. Not that I'm in the place to turn something like that down, but I would absolutely love to be a part of things like that.
Yeah. Have you ever written, and that brings us to the next question, but I'll quickly ask for myself. Have you ever written like spec Chucky scripts or a remake or whatever, a sequel of Friday the 13th, some of your favorite movies as a child, and you're like, I know it probably won't ever get made, but I'm going to write a damn story about one of my favorite movies, and I'm going to have it here on my mantle.
I haven't, because I know that I wouldn't be able to get it made, and I feel like time is precious. So I'd rather
Mm.
focus on original concepts that I know are going to be more monetizable than like, what are the chances I'm going to get a meeting with Sean Cunningham or whatever to talk about Friday the 13th, or whatever, who's got it now, Spyglass, talk about Scream. So no, I've and I suggest, I mean, if you're starting out and you want to start writing scripts, yeah, do a sequel to one of your favorite movies as practice, but know that you're never going to make money off of it. Just do it as a lark, just to try it. But if you want to make a career out of it, stay away from IPs you don't own. You're wasting your time. You focus on stuff that you think you can sell, that's an original concept or similar to it. You could do a slasher movie and call it, Shout, and it could be Scream, whatever, but don't try not to box yourself in, because you'll basically have nothing but a sample at the end of the day.
Yeah, I so dislike your advice there. Not only because I'm a fanboy, but I understand the money concept. You need to spend your time making money, but in my opinion, that feels like you forego the love for writing or filmmaking, and now you're
Mm-hmm.
doing it for profit, and that is the most evil of all decisions in life that I hate. But you have to do it sometimes.
I mean, I would disagree with your assessment of that situation, because, as a father and somebody with a mortgage, you have to think about it pragmatically, and yeah, I could write 20. Again, you can write a Scream script, you can write Goonies 2, just don't call it Goonies 2. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Save yourself the stress of doing that, because if you call it Goonies 2, nobody will read it. You could send it to like you send it to whatever, Paramount. Goonies 2, no, we're not touching that, because if they're planning a Goonies 2, they're not allowed technically, legally, to read yours. Unless you have an agent, and an agent has, here's an assignment. We want somebody to take a crack at Goonies 2, and you're hired for it. Legally, because it's not your IP, they can't touch it. Because if they end up making a Goonies 2, you can sue them because they read yours. So that's, yeah. So there's a lot that goes into touching something. Again, write all you want, whatever you want. That's the fun part about writing. But just know that legally, there's reasons why people are always looking for original concepts, or they'll hire you based off of a sample. But yeah, it's not even a money thing. It's just, there's so much, people are scared of being sued, and people get sued left and right in the business. So protect yourself, and protect the people who want to read you, so that they're not scared. Like, oh, stay away from that guy, because he does IP stuff that we can't touch. It's
Wow.
just,
You're right.
yeah, it's just, there's a lot of logistics that go into play with that.
All right. This was the question that piqued my interest the most while we end this segment about career in movies and get into some more fun topics. Brent Mania said, did you need Universal's permission to use the monsters for Monster Mash? I don't know how it works. Sorry if my question is odd.
No, not at all. The good news is, we didn't, because they are in the public domain. Frankenstein, the book, is public domain. Dracula is public domain. The Mummy is a mummy. Mummies are creatures. You don't need to get Romero's estate's permission to make a zombie movie. A wolf man is a wolf man. We didn't do Larry Talbot.
Hmm.
Although I do sort of hint at the Larry Talbot world, but it's for those monster kids that are paying attention. His last name is connected to the Larry Talbot world, but they're public domain, so you can basically do whatever. That's kind of the beauty, and that's why you get the Blood and Honey Winnie the Pooh movies, because Winnie the Pooh is public domain now.
Wow. And do you know how many years a movie or whatever has to take till it becomes public domain? Because I can imagine in another 10 years what some of these movies will be public domain might be.
I don't remember exactly. I want to say 50 years. I'm not exactly sure. So don't quote me on any dates, but usually, like, it's been like the first thing that was sort of brought into the public consciousness. So it's based off of the book, not necessarily the
The
Universal film.
film.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
well, so what we couldn't do is we couldn't copy the Boris Karloff look because that's trademarked by Universal. But
Mhm.
everybody, Roger Corman's done a Frankenstein movie. You could, it's up for grabs basically.
Oh, that's interesting, man. You can get an edge if you look for some of the books and some of the stuff that's coming out of public domain, and you could write a script like 2 years before it, and then all of a sudden, you hit the peak, and that might be something to think about. To make some extra cheddar.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, if you have an agent who will get your stuff out, that's the key. Then absolutely, you can have something ready. Oh, in 2 years, like Steamboat Willie actually is technically public domain, so you can make a Mickey Mouse movie, but you have to be kind of really careful because Disney will attack at anything. So there's ways around it, and you could plan ahead for sure. But just if you but make sure you have an avenue to be able to get those scripts out there.
All right, let's get into some fun stuff. Favorite horror movie of all time, if you have one.
Absolutely, I have many. There's actually two that share that spot, and depending on the day, they may shift. But it's Jaws and Scream. Those are my two favorite horror movies, mainly because I've seen them so many times, and they never get old, and I could watch them over and over and over again.
Yeah, Josh is directed so well, and maybe one of the reasons why I hated horror movies kind of growing up, I saw Josh, and I was living in a studio, not a studio apartment, but like an apartment. There's no water or lakes or oceans around me, but I was going to bed and I was looking at the white wall and I was like, Jaws is going to come through that wall. But how is that possible? That's how scared I was from that damn movie.
Yeah, it's incredible. I mean, talk about cinema language. There's so much. That's a great movie to study for filmmakers because it's a movie that every shot is so intricately well planned, especially with the boat stuff. That it's you mean I'm sure books have been written all about deconstructing the shot selection and the framing and all that stuff. But it's such a beautiful movie to look at. On top of the fact that it is genuinely terrifying, and yeah, I've hated the beach ever since.
Yeah, I don't think they want to see my fat well of a body on the beach. And look at me, I'm wearing something that makes me show my skin today, and I look like a pig. Have you ever seen a pig before they go to slaughter and they got like a bruise on their body? They call it like a hernia or something before they mess them up and you eat them. Like, look at me. But I'm doing it well. I'm doing it well. I'm wearing
You're doing it well.
wife,
You wear
the
it
wife
well.
beater with colors
I
today.
love it.
So this is the Happy Alien podcast. I consider everybody aliens, and I'm not talking about the border people that cross. Do you believe in aliens, and do you have any stories of alien sightings, UFOs, or anything that plays into you or your family's life?
Absolutely, I'm a big believer in all of that. Well, I'm going to say all of it, but that kind of what they call fringe topics. I absolutely believe UFOs, or now they've redubbed them UAP, which I heard a really interesting reason why they did that, and it kind of makes sense. But I'm a big believer in alien life and extraterrestrials and all that stuff, and I do think they've visited. I do think they're here. I even kind of think that they may be among us and we don't even know. I mean, there's so many people that every day I hear different stories. Because I seek these out of people seeing invisible creatures in the trees and stuff crawling around in the middle of the night. I'm like, that's. I mean, I can't imagine everybody's high on PCP. There's gotta be something to it. If all this crazy shit's happening, strange disappearances all over the world. People that are like returned 3 days later, like where they could never possibly have walked to. I love all that stuff. So absolutely, aliens. I think, and I think it's a big concern. I think people are kind of laughing it off, but I think it's going to be a massive issue for people coming down the line.
Yeah. So, have you had any UFO experiences, or have you ever felt like you've had an alien encounter growing up, or anything like that?
I have not. Unfortunately, I can't say that I've experienced anything that I would consider ufological, for lack of a better term. But I've always been petrified of the almond eyes. The gray aliens with the black
The
eyes.
Grays.
Al-
Yep.
Always been petrified of those creatures, and I don't know if it's just because instinctually they're freaky, but there's something about them that freaks me out. So, have I had an abduction situation and just not remember it? I don't know, but those things scare the crap out of me. And there's a movie I recommend if you haven't seen it.
Communion.
Yes, yes,
Communion.
horrifying.
I already knew. I already knew that is the most freakish, scariest movie I have ever seen in my life.
Yes. Oh my God, nightmares forever.
Communion. It's so funny. I knew you were gonna say that. See, we're alike. We're like best friends forever. Like
For sure, man.
we're like best friends forever. But I have markings on my head or on the back of my head that came out of nowhere when I was around 9 or 10 years old. And
Really?
yes, out of nowhere. But I had a lot of surgeries when I was a little kid. And I started to have visions of like seeing Jesus in a closet before I even went to church and knew what he looked like. I would tell my parents and whoever was there what Jesus looked like, that I had conversations with him. Then I started saying I had encounters with I didn't say the word alien. I was like a creature or something that I didn't understand, all white. And then around that time, I went for another visit because I had a lot of surgeries when I was a little kid. I had a lot of issues. And then all of a sudden, they're checking my ears and in my head and everything. And then they're like, what are these dots? I have a line with two dots on the end in the back of
Wow.
my skull. And the doctor was like, you know, what, when did they do surgery on your brain or your cerebrum or whatever it was? And then my mom or my dad at the time was like, we don't remember any surgery. So they're like, well, what is this scar from? Did he get hit? Could it look like he hit his head? Could have been in a cut? They couldn't remember anything. And then they just looked up my records, from the hospital that did all the surgeries when I was younger. They found nothing in my head or neck area of surgeries, only my ears. And it was a mystery. And the doctors just let it go. But then growing up, I learned about aliens, and then I saw people with markings. And I started saying, was I abducted? Because I was having visions of a lot of things back in those days. So I don't know. I might be an alien abductee. I don't know. But it's just
Wow.
interesting to think about because I've always had a fascination and a fear of aliens. And then when I did finally watch that movie, Communion, I couldn't even watch it, dude. I couldn't finish it. Every time they popped up on screen toward the end of the movie in the bedroom, I was like,
Mm,
that's them. That's what I remember as a kid. That's the
wow.
fear I felt. So that movie just resonated with me. So, I mean, I don't want to be looked at by doctors, psychotherapists, but I don't know, man. I have an overactive brain to this day. People can call me bipolar, whatever they want, but I got a unique brain and maybe I've been abducted. I don't know. It's pretty interesting.
Have you ever considered maybe checking to see if you have an implant or anything like that?
Oh God, we're getting in the conspiracy realm. You know what? I'm afraid of everything. And I'm afraid they'll find something. Like, should I?
Yeah.
Am I just gonna be walking one day? I get ringing in the ears constantly, but I have other issues. But oh, you got me scared now. Shit, I didn't want to think about that.
Damn. Oh, sorry, man.
It's all good, brother. Uh, wow, I'm actually thinking about it now. Woo! Do I die at 50? You've been getting signals this entire show through your brain that I've been sending to the entire audience. That is a set of flashing lights that tells you to donate. Send super chats.
Oh, look at that. Pretty high tech. He froze. I'm not sure if we're still live or not. If the internet is still here. Oh, yeah.
Off on my computer. Everything
Oh, there
like
you go.
shut off for a second. I think I'm back. Yeah,
Yeah, you're
something
back.
happened, guys. Forgive me.
It's your implant.
Back in the New York groove. You know what? We started talking about it, and then you're right. They're after us. All right.
Damn, dude.
Well, what's the next one? Oh yeah. So me and you, when we met, we started talking a little bit, and then I went to your house on a couple of occasions. Beautiful house, by the way. The only thing that freaked me out was like I would sit down to maybe watch a movie or eat some food or whatever, and then I'd look to my right, and there'd be like a creature or a girl or a dead zombie or something like that, and I'm like, come on, man, what the heck is good? I it's like your little lair.
Yeah, you need a layer. You know, every good creative person needs to have their little cave.
I
Luckily, my
love
wife
your
lets me do
kitchen.
that.
Your kitchen. I love food, so I would spend a lot of time in your kitchen. But I remember you had action figures galore and toys, like
Hmm.
all of somewhere on the counter or above the counter.
Yep. Oh yeah.
Is it still there? Is it still there? All there?
St- yeah, still there. I don't buy toys as much anymore, but everything I've collected is still with me in some way, shape, or form.
That's awesome. And somebody wrote earlier, I didn't bring it on screen, but they said they can tell you love what you do and you love your life. So that was a beautiful
Yeah,
comment.
yeah. Thank you for that.
Yeah, he's got a beautiful family. You had to learn a lot about diabetes too. Like your son was diagnosed with diabetes at the same time around where I found out I had diabetes too. So
Oh
I
man.
felt the kinship to you because your family was learning how to deal with all that stuff, and that was really tough.
It is, and it continues to be an issue. I mean, you know, he has type 1, so his is kind of like for life. He'll just
Yeah, not
have to always,
reversible.
yeah, he'll have to deal with needles and insulin for the rest of his life, and it's that's tough when you get it at. He was 3 years old in the hospital. You know, he spent his third birthday in the hospital, and it's not. I mean, it's just on top of everything in life. Now we have to deal with a medical condition. I mean, it could be worse, absolutely, but it's still not a pleasant situation for anybody. We've managed it, but it's dude, life just throws you curveball after curveball, and you have to keep either ducking or making sure you hit back somehow.
Yeah, I saw his first movie that you directed with him. I saw his first movie that you
Oh
directed
yeah,
with him.
yeah,
So
yeah.
you're brainwashing him at an early age. That's good.
He loved it. Yeah. Both my kids are very much into movies, and like me, I grew up without any kind of limits, so I would watch tons of horror movies as a kid, and I do that with them. I don't want them to be scared of movies. I want them to be excited to see a movie, and approach it critically, but also approach it as, hey, we're going to enter a special different world. We're going to see the world from somebody else's perspective, and all that fun stuff, because I think appreciating this art form is hopefully going to keep it from dying, because as we've seen, movie theaters are failing. Blockbusters aren't making the money they're supposed to be making, or at least they're projected to be making. So I think audiences have sort of, at least young audiences, have lost respect for movies a little bit, and I want to make sure my kids do not.
Yeah, we're going to talk a little bit about physical media and the thought process of theaters and all that in our pop culture segment. Me and you have a little bit of a kinship, as I was talking about when I hung out with you a few different times about conspiracy theories. And I keep trying to
Mhm.
make a date with you, but it hasn't seemed to happen. But we needed to
It's
have
been a while.
conspiracy night where we watch all these insane videos that you cannot find on YouTube. But what's your favorite conspiracy theory, if you have one that started your thought process into maybe an awakening, into looking at alternatives? Is there one big one that you just think about a lot?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot. At first, because you hear the term conspiracy theory and you think, oh, whatever, it's just a bunch of guys saying some kind of nonsense. And for the most part, if you go deep enough, you're like, oh yeah, this doesn't really track. But then there's things like 9/11, where like 9/11 was a big one for me. I'm like, damn, wow, there's a lot of weirdness here. That it doesn't feel right. And I don't know if we want to touch this subject on YouTube, but Sandy Hook was another one
Yeah.
where I'm like, what the hell? There was a lot of weirdness there. Now, we don't have to go down that rabbit hole, but
Yeah, you don't want to
um,
end up like Alex Jones and get sued for $85 billion somehow, or $111 billion. Like,
yeah,
huh? How does that make sense?
yeah, it's very strange. Very strange. But yeah, though I think those two were the ones I'm like, okay, maybe there's something to this. That's a little, a little more inside the box than outside the box. That's people are talking it down for a reason, so you don't think about it. And then a lot of the Hollywood shit. I mean, luckily, you may have some stories, but luckily, I've never been in a situation where I've experienced any of the darker side of Hollywood. But dude, I absolutely believe that there's some disgusting, shady shit happening in Hollywood. I don't, yeah. I mean, and then hearing, everything that happened with, the Nickelodeon side, I'm like, that kind of taints everything, of my childhood and makes you think, well, what else is happening that we don't hear about? Or why is that? Why did that guy get famous? Oh, well, blah, 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 blah. So there's a lot of that I think, there's a lot of where there's smoke, there's fire, basically. So, yeah, I'm much more open, than I think I was, pre-pandemic, to things being, um, true or not true.
Is that when you started to like think things didn't add up, like during the pandemic, or was it actually years prior, watching videos or documentaries or anything?
Yeah, it was. Well, it was years before the pandemic, but I always kind of set it as sort of like a template time. But it was because I don't remember the year that we met, but it was definitely way before the pandemic. But at that point, I
Yeah,
was I I know you had shown me some stuff, and then I just sort of like, sort of fell down the rabbit hole in terms of like, well, this doesn't make sense, this doesn't add up. But it's been a bit. I sort of stepped back just because life is life, and there's nothing you can do about some of this stuff. So it'll just drive you crazy going down that research rabbit hole. But I still find that so fascinating, and there's more reason why I don't want my kids to be child actors. You hear so many horror stories, and I want to make sure that if that's what they want to do, I'm gonna wait till they're 18, and they really want to do this, and take this on, and uh as much as I can help them dodge the bullets of whatever's going on in Hollywood, because that's the one thing I can control, is how my kids approach the business.
yeah, that's awesome. And I forgot to ask you earlier, so I'll add it now, but I'll take this off screen. Speaking of Nickelodeon, you wrote a book about Are You Afraid of the Dark, or an episode guide or something like that? Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I'm obviously a big Nick fan. Watched all those shows. Salute You Shorts. I don't know if you're familiar with that one. And yeah, Are You for the Dark that was my Twilight Zone. I love that show to death, and I connected with the creator, and online on Facebook, and we were gonna do a documentary, but that was proving a little difficult. But through him, I was able to get in touch with some of the actors from the show, and so I decided to put together a episode guide slash interview book with with some of the cast and crew, and give that show some love, because I think it's sadly been forgotten, and I don't think Nick's really taking care of its old shows at all. So I think anything we could do to sort of say, hey, this stuff was great and you need to watch it, and it still holds up to this day. There's still creepy as hell episodes. So yeah, it's if anything, that's my favorite kind of Nickelodeon. That's probably my favorite anthology horror show of all time. So I had to shine a spotlight on it as best I could.
Yeah, that's awesome. What's the name of the book? Is it still available to purchase on Amazon, or do you have a website or anything that sells it?
Uh, yeah, it's on Amazon. It's called the "Are You Afraid of the Dark" Campfire Companion, and it's a breakdown of the plot of every episode, plus connective tissue because it was very different from Twilight Zone, where I mean that Twilight Zone had a host. This had the Campfire Gang, and the Midnight Society would every episode introduce the story, but there was a continuing storyline that was kind of buried behind the scenes. So my book aimed at connecting the dots. Like, oh, this episode they mentioned this, but later on that's brought back in this, so that you could watch along with the guide, you could watch the show with the different eyes and be like, oh, I never noticed that they referenced this in that episode, or this was a, sort of a introduction of this topic and over there, because there's a lot of that, which made it very, to me, very fun to watch, and just not just every episode was a different kind of random thing.
Yeah, you have a beautiful mind, just like mine. I notice when you talk, so many thoughts and so many angles go in both of our heads, where we kind of don't know where to go with our conversation because our brain is constantly working and performing. And I call it a beautiful mind. So enjoyed seeing that. I'm trying to learn how to do this with my technology limitations that I have. But since you are a fan of Salute Your Shorts, maybe I can get you on a live stream and we can watch the Zeke the Plumber episode for members only, and we can break it down together from your perspective as a horror director, a horror writer. I would like to get your take on that episode.
Oh, it's one of my favorites of that show. So I mean, absolutely, I would love to. Maybe as a Halloween special or something. I would love to do that.
There you go. Hey, we do got SplatCon coming up, and I know you go to conventions where I see you in Brendan's videos and stuff like that. I don't know if I'm going to get any passes, but man, I'd be honored if you came down to SplatCon and met all the Nickelodeon actors that are going to be there in September.
Is it here in LA?
Yeah, it's at the Hilton, LAX Hilton, and I
Wow.
believe it's in like September or no, October. It's in October. But I'll be in contact with you, brother.
Awesome. Yeah, that sounds great.
So just want to thank Colt C. He's now a new member of the channel. Thank you very much for the support. And we're going to be getting to your questions in just a couple more minutes. So get your super chats, your questions in, hit that thumbs up, that like, that subscribe button. And we are here on Happy Aliens podcast number 9 with director, producer, writer Jose Prendes, talking to his career, his favorite conspiracy theories, and a lot about that community. He's also known as Master Chaos on YouTube, where he does movie and film reviews and a lot of amazing stuff for a lot of you guys. Check out all his info and descriptions down below. Now, Jose, let me ask you, what are your thoughts on pop culture, today's DVD and media? Will it survive? And your theater going experience, how can they make it better? I know it's a lot of questions, but how can they make it better or worthwhile? And how can we save it?
Yeah, okay. Loaded questions. I think physical media is great. I'm a big proponent. Most of my channel is discussing physical media and things like that. I think it's getting a little too expensive, and I think it's going to become more of a collector's market than it is now. The fact that Best Buy doesn't, release any more movies is kind of horrible. But to me, that signals the death of Best Buy. I don't think that's going to last. I mean, that's what happened to Circuit City. So we'll see. You can still get movies, the standard Hollywood stuff, Target and Walmart and things like that. But if you're looking for the, really unique stuff, you have to go online. Amazon has become the de facto place to find everything. But I think it's important to own your movies, because even if you have it on streaming, they could take it off the next day. It's not there forever. I mean, even Amazon said, if you buy a movie on Amazon, you don't own it. They reserve the right to just take it away, to not have it anymore, even though you paid for it. So if you love a movie, buy it. It's the only way you're going to physically be able to watch it. And who knows, You know, the day that they announced that they're going to stop making Blu-ray players, then we're in trouble. Then we're kind of stuck with streaming. But streaming is absolutely the future. I can't imagine it's going away anytime soon. Hopefully, it'll get better with, you know, whatever streaming and Wi-Fi and all that stuff gets kind of figured out, so it's a little easier and a little less janky. But you know, the movie theater experience has changed because during lockdown, everybody was trained to stay at home. Like, oh, this is better. We can pause it when we want to go pee. We can make snacks whenever. We don't have to pay, you know, pay $10 for popcorn. It's 25 cents, you know, for 25 cents a bag if you go to like Costco and you get the big thing. You know, it's cheaper. You could rent a movie for like a new movie on Amazon for like $20. And, you know, a ticket to a movie could be $20 on its own for just yourself. But at home, $20, and that's for the whole family. So it's become easier and more comfortable, and you don't have to worry about, you know, people on their phones, whatever, people talking, you know, people getting high or drinking and causing a disturbance that happens so often. To the point that I personally, and I love going to the movies. I love it, but it's become unpleasant, and it's become just kind of more of a chore than like the ritual it was. And this is, you know, you're talking to a guy who does this for a living, but even people in distribution prefer watching movies at home because it's just you know, you don't get that church atmosphere anymore. Like I was saying, people don't respect movies as much as they used to, and I think that probably has a lot to do with stuff like TikTok and, you know, YouTube Shorts, where people. I mean, my son is 9, and he's addicted to shorts. He barely watches long form videos. He will only watch like little whatever quick shorts over and over, like in a row. And I'm like, are you getting anything from that? I just the mind starts to shift, and that's why I make them watch movies and sit and have as much attention as possible, because I think that's a skill this generation is losing, unfortunately.
How can they change the theater going experience? Do you have any examples of like what they can do to make it better, make more money, or have you really thought about it? And then I'll give my example after you finish your statement.
You know, back in the days, 50s, 60s, 70s, people would dress up in a suit and tie to go to the movies. You know, it was, you know, women would put on pearls to go sit in the dark and watch a movie. You know, nowadays people just roll in a t-shirt and sweats or whatever, and you know, maybe they'll watch half the movie and maybe they'll be on their phone. I took my son to see Sonic the Hedgehog 2, and this lady was sitting next to me the whole time on her phone, the whole movie. She never looked up once. And I know that because she was so distracting that I kept looking at her. I'm like, she's not looking. She's never looked at the movie once. Honestly, I think audiences need to change. I think there has to be more respect for the movie going experience. I think movie theaters are doing what they can. You know, I think lowering prices is not feasible anymore. I don't think they can lower the snacks because that's how they make most of their money. You know, now they're doing booze, which brings in a whole new clientele. Then you have drunk people acting up, and that changes things. Honestly, I think studios need to be aware that audiences want something different, and they shouldn't just keep regurgitating, you know, sequel after sequel, remake after remake. Don't spend so much money on a movie. Deliver fresh content. Look at the 80s. Almost everything in the 80s was like, you know, for the most part, was all original stuff. Almost, you know, rarely did you get we never got a Goonies 2. We never got a Monster Squad 2. You know, well, Monster Squad tanked, but Goonies was a hit. Well, where was Goonies 2? You know, we never got a Lost Boys 2 till like the 2000s. So a lot of those movies, you know, were just kind of like worked off of the fact that they were one and dones, but audiences loved them, and they were, you know, modest hits at the time because audiences wanted something unique and something different. And I feel that's missing from movies nowadays. Now it's just superhero shit or really, really depressing, slow horror movies, which, you know, have an audience, but even that's burning out. So audiences need to change. That would be my thing about how to save the movies.
Yeah, I love your statement, and it could go into the realm of so many angles. when you think about it. But I love your aspect, and I haven't really thought it through completely because I think about everything else, unfortunately, and I'm not getting any money to think about it. But just to play off what you said, the respect factor, the wanting to wear a good outfit like it's an event. An actual movie has now not become an event. Oh, you could stay at home, you can go out, you can do this, you can do that. It's not really an event anymore. So it needs to be an event. So just quickly looking at it from that perspective, I don't care if they raise prices. I don't. Because if they're going to show it one time a day, 6 p.m., 7 p.m., a 300-seat theater, it's going to be an event. So on Friday night, they only have two showings, one at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, one at 6 o'clock in the afternoon or 7. And then people are going to pay $30 for a ticket. It's going to be an event for their kids in the afternoon. And then the one-time screening at 7 or 8 o'clock at night, it's going to be an event. And they're going to pay for it. And they're going to respect it. Then maybe they put in stipulations where they have a cell phone blocker, where your cell phones get turned off or whatever. And then if you do need to worry about your family, you walk out of the theater, then you check your cell phone. It needs to be an event. And maybe they can bring curtains back, where they open up, you have somebody announce the movie, tell a little story about the movie, or something like that. Maybe even show the previous movie before that movie, but make it an event. They're trying to maximize the dollar. They're trying to show it, 20 times a day. They're trying to add IMAX and this and that. Like I said, they're separating from the event. And if you make it an event, people will go.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of variables with money, the businessmen. I wish they would get rid of theaters. And you would only have one or two in every town. Like literally, that's it. And I would prefer it be a mom and pop theater where they made it an event and they can actually thrive. But when it's big corporations, now, like you said, they want to have 80 theaters. They want to have 30 screens in that area. My God, 3 is enough. 2 is enough. 1 is enough. So that's just my thoughts. But trust me, the lawyers and the businessmen would be like, "You're stupid. You haven't thought it through." I'm like, I don't care. Make it an event and I will go. Like that movie about baseball. If you build it, they will come.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Make it a damn event. All right, show. Thank you guys for chiming in. Let me get to some questions before you'll be out of here in the next 9 or 10 minutes, if that's okay, Jose.
Oh, sure, man.
So I like to give, some people are fans of mine that come on the show and talk, and I give them one question because I've been questioning you this entire episode. You can ask me anything, and sometimes I get afraid of what you're going to ask, but go ahead. If anything that you've, knowing me, that you've always wanted to ask, nothing's off the table. Go ahead.
Well, I mean, I was going to ask you off air, but if nothing's off the table, I'm curious what's been happening. Since you spoke out about your unfortunate sort of situation that happened during the making of Salute Your Shorts. If you've not so much lost touch with, but maybe got in trouble with your castmates about it. I know you mentioned that something had happened, but I'm not sure if that's sort of been patched up or if that's sort of still in process after your videos.
Yeah, I've mentioned a little bit about the question that you've asked on other videos, so you guys can check back if I don't give the full answer here. But yes, it's a little bit to go into. It's a long story, but I made a video after watching the Nickelodeon On the Set documentary. For the people that don't know this storyline, I made a video talking about experiences I had with a like a Nickelodeon executive and possibility of grooming. But I didn't name that person because they were never convicted and nothing ever happened. But it was a scary interaction with a Nickelodeon executive, from New York. But it had nothing to do with our show. That person was not literally on our show. And then once I spoke out to the producers of our show about that specific hotel interaction, that person was removed off of our set, kicked back to New York, and told never to come here. So our cast and crew made a really safe environment, and the Nickelodeon documentary wasn't truly our experience on Salute Your Shorts. So we'll leave that. But I also had a storyline from the Quiet on the Set documentary working with a director by the name of Brian Peck, who was a convicted official PDF file. And I worked with him. So watching the documentary, the Nickelodeon executive situation happened, brought back memories. But more so when they talked about Brian Peck, I was like, man, I worked with that guy for like a month or so filming like a horror movie. And now all these instances went back into my head. And I'm like, his pattern of possible grooming or PDF filing was seen even before the Nickelodeon stuff that he did. So I made a video telling my experiences. It kind of went viral. A lot of Nickelodeon people picked it up. But unfortunately, people thought that I was actually a victim when I was just telling my stories. And I wasn't a victim. It was just scary interactions. And then it kind of went out. So I met a lot of people, kind words, but the message was getting construed. Then producers of the documentary got a hold of me. They wanted to do follow-ups, like I had more to say. And I'm like, no, that's not the case. You're not going to get any content from me. There's nothing else to say. Nothing happened to me. I'm not a victim. It was just some scary stuff that I experienced, and I just needed to let it out. But it got overwhelming because, like I said, they started to associate my video with me being a victim. Then they talk to my castmates. They send messages to them. Hey, did it affect you? Did it affect your family? What was your experience? Now reporters are getting a hold of them. So they got their own lives. They didn't have that experience that I shared. And now they're like, why the heck is this coming after me? I had a few people that were like, Mike, what the hell's going on? Like, this is wrong. And then I had to rethink, why did I make the video? Like, did I have really anything to add, to that story? I didn't have any actual allegations. There was no, actual things that happened. Did I really add anything to that story to possibly bring pain to people that I love and other people? And I was like, no. I did it to share my stories. I knew it would get some views. And I mean, who doesn't like the views, because you can make a few dollars. But my intentions were, I like to share my life, and I share my life too much. And the more I thought about it, and I got good advice, and we'll end it with this. I got good advice from a cast member. They said, Michael, I understand you need content for your channel. You like to share your life. You like to share your stories. And you felt some sort of way when all the memories came flooding back for those stories that you experienced. They go, but we know you also want fame again. You want to get views. You want to earn a few dollars. You want to find more fans. And that was an opportunity for you to find more Nickelodeon fans to find your channel. And they're like, Michael, I understand why you did it. It was all good. It wasn't of an evil nature. But that was a negative train. That was a negative train of like popularity to get on top of that train, because it's coming from a negative aspect. So I put myself on a negative storyline of, PDF filing and harassment in the workplace and bullying. And then I placed myself kind of in the middle of it a little bit when it was a negative train. And for my life, I only need to get aboard positive trains. So I shouldn't have made the video. And it unwillingly brought a little bit of negative attention to some people. And let's be honest, some of these people may have their own skeletons in their own personal closets. That now that either reporters or people are asking questions, they're like, I don't want the eyes on me. Like, I don't want the eyes on me. That's so I feel bad about doing that. Um, but I kind of would have liked a little more empathy, during that situation. But sometimes when people get angry, you know, empathy is not the first reaction. It's anger and frustration, and then you get to the empathy and the respect, and they're like, "Oh, it's okay. We're all good. I was just mad and scared." But everything's fine now. But
Mm.
I did take the video offline, um, because I had a lot of fears, and I just figured, get out of it, get out of this negative train. Like, people that saw the video know my experiences. Maybe they saved it. It's all good. It's on the internet. It's out there forever somehow. But let me just, I don't need to talk about it every day to try to earn an extra $20 a day. I don't need to keep milking it. That it's just not my life. It's a negative train. I said my piece, and I reconnected with a bunch of people through this, and a positive came out of it. So we're all good. That's the situation.
Great. Well, I'm glad. It's a positive end to that rainbow, for lack of a better word.
Lack of a better word. All right, let's just quickly look and see if there's any questions before we get on out of here with Jose. My favorite episode was from the clown that smoked the cigar. I don't know what that was from. That might be Are You Afraid of the Dark?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Zebo.
Are you a Goosebumps fan? Brent Mania asked.
Absolutely, and I actually wrote a book on Goosebumps as well. It's another episode guide / interview book with the people behind that. So that was it was harder to get people from Goosebumps involved than it was the people from Are You Afraid of the Dark.
Favorite actor or actress you worked with?
Doug Bradley from Hellraiser, he's in my new one. And Denise Duff from the Subspecies movies. In terms of celebrity, they're my favorites. Love them.
Yeah, I'll just quickly chime in because I like the question. My favorite actor that I worked with is two of them. It is Rod Steiger from On the Waterfront, Academy Award winner, and he's also the general in Mars Attacks that wants to kill the aliens. But that's what today's culture knows him for. But Rod Steiger, working with an Academy Award winner in the presidential library, where he's like the president and I'm like this Captain Nuke guy that found a nuclear weapon in Roger Corman's B movie called Captain Nuke and the Bomber Boys. Like, what an experience. My dad wanted to meet him, and it was one of the greatest experiences of my life. And then the other actor, Rod Steiger, real quick, Rod Steiger changed the entire set. So we were filming at the Simi Valley Ronald Reagan Library, where they have a White House set. And then so they set it all up, for Rod Steiger when he comes in. They set the cameras up, the lighting up, and then he shows up like in a limousine or, whatever they gave him. And then he gets on set, they get him in costume and makeup. Then he gets on set, and then the director's like, all right. And the director is the brother of Bob Gale, who created Back to the Future for this Roger Corman movie. Yeah, that's how I met Bob Gale. But that's a story for another day. But so the director's like, okay, we're going to film you here. You're going to start your lines here, and then you can walk around the desk and do this. And then Rod Steiger's like, no, I'm going to start there. I'm going to come here. I'm going to go there. And you, hey, little fat kid, come here. What are you in this movie? I'm like, I'm Captain Nuke. My name is on the title. I'm the Captain Nuke. And he's like, yeah, I don't give a damn. He goes, you're going to come here, you're going to do this. And then they're like, we have to change the cameras now and the lighting. We set it up for like an hour, with our stand-ins and everything. He's like, I don't care. Get it done. They're like, well, we need another hour. He's like, but I got to be out of here in 2 hours. I got to get going. They're like, but they did it. They rushed the crew. They set up the lighting. And that's an Academy Award winner that walks on set and takes charge and made himself known. And that taught me a lot about the acting industry, because after that moment, for productions that I was the star in or that episode or whatever the case may be, I was like, stand your ground. This is your job. Don't let the director dictate your acting. You know, don't let the director dictate your acting, where you're going to stand, where you're going to move. Do some rehearsals, get on page with the director, then set up the lighting, for the actor and the director to get in combination. They're both shots, like, because actors, they're afraid to speak up. They're like, oh, I'm so proud to be in this movie. Even though I'm the star of it, I'm so proud. So they're like, director, direct me. And it needs to be a collaboration. That's how you build chemistry. That's how you build friendships, and you learn about each other because you actually talk the part and the character. But in Rod Steiger's case, he was just, the crusty old man that, just wanted to have his piece. But that was an experience of me taking charge of my career that I witnessed, that I loved. Then there was the moment, and I'll end it with this. In that same movie, there was a moment where I was in this is before the Rod Steiger incident or that thing. I was in a trailer with Martin Sheen, because he's in that movie as well as like the police officer or whatever. And we're rehearsing lines. So I went into the trailer and I brought my dad to the set because my dad was a big fan, wanted to meet him. He's a big fan of Apocalypse Now and everything. My dad, like, it made my dad so happy. And then I was in the trailer with my dad sitting there. Martin Sheen is rehearsing lines with me in his big old trailer, and we're rehearsing lines. And then I looked at him and I went, oh my effing God. I'm in a trailer with Martin Sheen, Academy Award winning actor, Apocalypse Now, and I'm like starring in this movie next to him. I'm a real actor. I'm a real actor. I don't care if it's a Roger Corman B movie. Like, I'm a real actor. I've made it. That was my moment that I said, I am a movie star. Even if the movie didn't do good, didn't make theaters, I was like, wow. So that was my favorite actors that I ever worked with.
That's cool.
There we go. So, Jose, thank you so much for being on the podcast. Anything that you wanted to mention and say to people before we get on out of here? Where can they find you or support you?
Oh, well, thanks for having me on. I do want to say, as an aside, we've got to do a podcast where each week or whatever, once a month, we get together to discuss one conspiracy theory, like in depth. I think that'd be so fun to just, like, you and I go down the rabbit hole. Like, we pick something at random, and then we do research on the side, and then we come together and pool our research together. That would be fun as shit, man. So keep that in the back of your mind if you want to do that. Yeah, I'm down.
The problem is YouTube flags everything we say or do, and then I hate putting in work of 3 or 4 hours of creating a podcast, and then if I don't get super chats, I mean, no disrespect to the fans, I don't make any money. And then I feel like I wasted 4 hours when I could have maybe made an OnlyFans and took pictures of my feet and made like 30, 40 bucks, That's how it feels. But
that's true.
For myself, I need to do that and not care about the money aspect of it, where I can just have a good time. And maybe we can do it on Rumble or Patreon. And I don't know how that really works, but I don't have a subscriber base, but I don't care. You're exactly right. I would be honored to do it with you. And I would really love to go into the weeds, but I'm afraid I'll get sued like Alex Jones. And I wish I could show videos and stuff that I found from these things, but my technology ain't so good. So it has to be voice. So I can't prove the theory, or I can't prove the video or whatever that we're talking about, because I don't have the technology. But I mean, why do I keep thinking of limitations? Just shut up and say yes. Yes, Jose. We're going to do that. I promise. We'll make a date to do that.
We'll make that happen.
So thank you very much. Oh, yeah. Anything else? Yeah, please.
You could find me on YouTube, Master CHA0S. There you go. It's I had my blur feature on, but anyway, Master CHA0S TV, and I talk movies over there. And I'm right now sort of in hiatus because the school year is finishing up, so I want to make sure my kids are done and we can enjoy the summer. I'm going to Italy in 2 weeks, which is going to be great. Me and the family are going to hang out there. And then I start pre-production on my new movie, which is Michael Mann's Heat meets Hellraiser. That's the best way for me to describe it. Yeah.
What the hell is Michael Manteet? Who is that? I don't even know.
No, Michael Mann's Heat, his movie Heat.
Oh, Michael Mann's Heat, the movie.
Yeah, yeah.
So we're going to have a Hellraiser or some sort of creature in the middle of the street wearing mask, shooting in downtown LA, robbing a bank.
Yeah, potentially, yeah. I mean, it's. I think you have to see it or at least read it, and I hope you will because I have a part in it for you, and it'll be SAG, so we can finally work together.
Yeah, how did you get Michael Madsen in Monster Mash? Isn't he a part of SAG or does he do non-union or maybe they have a new law? I don't even know. I got to look into it.
You know, I mean, I guess he just he is SAG. I guess he just. It was right before Christmas. Yeah, and he just did it. Yes, it was a SAG project.
We could talk about that off air. Hey, everybody, thanks for tuning in to the Happy Alien podcast. And stay online, Jose. I'm just going to end the show with an outro, and I'd like to talk to you for a minute or two before we get out of here.
Okay,
but everybody, please hit that thumbs up, that like, that subscribe button. I wanted to remind everybody I'm going to do an after... Oh, no, thank you, but stay online. I'm going to do an after hours for members only right after this. If you are available, you're always welcome. We can get into really conspiracy stuff because it's going to be in our members only section. But if you don't have the time, Jose, no worries. We'll talk about that in a minute. Yeah, thank you guys for joining in, and I appreciate each and every one of you, and I love the hell out of you because we need to spread love nowadays. There's too much divide and too much anger, and let's just respect everybody and their career choices and their lifestyles. Like I said, the Happy Alien podcast is a no judgment free zone, but I will definitely judge things in members only and on other situations. So I ask everybody to end the show. Jose Prendes, are you leaving this show a happy alien?
You know, I came in as a happy alien, and I'm leaving as an even happier alien. Yes. Thanks for having me, man.
All right. Stick around. I'm going to put the outro and we're done. Thanks, everybody. Good night. See you in the members only section in about 20 minutes.